didn't have any other injuries. I was completely coherent, no brain trauma. I was conscious, and I was very, very mad. I couldn't believe someone else had made the huge mistake they had made, and wrecked my motorcycle. and my leg was hurt real bad too. So when I tried to get up out of the road, I realized how fast the blood was pouring out. It was almost like, if you can imagine, if you went to pour tea out of a pitcher into a glass, but you didn't have the glass there and the tea was just pouring out on the dining room table, how fast that pitcher of tea would just spread across the table and onto the floor. That's about how fast the blood was leaking out. And I realized a few things very quickly. Number one, the end was real close. I was just about to die. Number two, being mad at the person in that pickup truck wasn't going to do either one of us any good. And number three, I would not be able to save myself. I was completely helpless. So I laid my head back and I prayed, dear God, please don't let me die on this highway today. Within moments, 3 men came up and they were asking me some questions. Are you conscious? And one of them said, yeah, we called 911. Another gentleman said, well, if we don't do something to stop the blood, he's not going to live until the ambulance gets here. The wreck happened about a block and a half from the ambulance company's office. So I realized just how crucial it was. If he was serious, it was going to be the end real fast. A young man that was there with no medical training, no military training, no first responder training, wasn't even a Boy Scout. He was a forklift mechanic, and he happened to be one of the people who stopped to help an old busted up biker there that day. He pulled this belt off of his waist, and he wrapped it around my leg, and used his strength to slow the blood flow until the ambulance could get there and take over. He literally saved my life with this belt that day. Was it a coincidence that he just happened to be there? I don't think so. I don't believe in coincidence. I believe it was divine intervention. Now I won't go into too many of the gory details. The leg was broken pretty bad. They life flighted me to Atlanta Medical Center, where by the time we got there, the medication that the helicopter pilots gave me, I passed out. I basically went into like a medically induced coma. And I slept for the next 7 days. The leg was broken pretty bad, but like I said, the artery was severed. They pulled the vein out of my left leg and did a vein transplant to patch the artery. Technically, it was a success, but it had been too long since there had been blood flow in the foot, so the foot was dead. They couldn't get any pulse in that, and it was slowly killing me. They couldn't get me conscious enough to keep my vitals stable to get me conscious to ask my permission to amputate. The decision had to be made where to make the amputation. Do you just cut off what's not working well and patch up the rest of it, or do you come all the way up to good bone? My wife was faced with that decision. Fortunately, through much prayer and meditation, she came to what I believe to be the best possible decision due to the circumstances I was in. They amputated all the way up above my knee and went to good bone. I woke up 7 days later wanting to scream, hallelujah, praise God. It worked. I wasn't able to scream, shout. I wasn't even able to talk. You see, as I came out of the sedation that morning, for some reason in my confusion and the medicated state that I was in, I thought it was a brilliant idea to get this tube out of my throat so that I could call for help or try to find my wife or something. I don't remember exactly what happened. Like I said, I was heavily medicated, and they had me restrained to the bed. Somehow, I managed to wiggle myself down, get my face down to the tube that they had run down into my esophagus, basically to keep the airways open and keep me breathing. It's a tube that they run inside, and they inflate this balloon in there to keep it in place. Normally, when they take this out, they let the air out of that little balloon, and it slides out pretty easy. I didn't wait for that. I was eager to get it out and speak, and so I managed to get my face to my hand. Like I said, they had me restrained, but somehow I managed to get my face down there and literally pulled this thing out, inflated, out of my throat, and it did some severe damage to my vocal cords. It took months before I could speak without, just being in a complete whisper. So that's why I say it's truly an honor, a blessing, and a miracle that I'm able to stand here and talk to you. I thought for a long time that I might not ever be able to speak again. Anyway, so that's a little bit about how I wound up being an amputee. Now, while I was in the hospital, my wife noticed one of the nurses come in one day, was wearing a dress, and she had shiny ankles. She was bilateral, below the knee amputee, meaning she was missing both feet. And she was working there at the hospital. And so my wife went up to her and asked her to come speak to me after I came out of it. And she came, the day after I woke up, she came and she talked to me, and she told me a little bit about her story. She had been an amputee most of her life since she was about 6 years old. And she had gone through school, regular school and high school, put herself through college. She had worked many different jobs. She had been on many amazing adventures. She was a rock climber, in fact, and still does rock climbing to this day. And she basically told me, she said, John, I understand how you feel, and I know that if you go home from the hospital, no one will blame you if you sit there and become bitter over what's happened to you. This very traumatic experience, one that many people don't recover mentally from. She said, no one will blame you. It will be understandable. But you don't have to. You can choose. You can choose to do anything you want to do. And those words stuck with me for quite a while as I went on home, and I began to try to understand what it was that I was going to be able to do now. I have up here a picture of a race that I competed in, one of the first races I did, standing up on a prosthetic. And the saying here, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. This was a quote from a Chinese philosopher. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, I'll get it wrong. But the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. One step. But it's not a physical step. The first step is the mental step, the mental decision, the choice to get up and move and take the journey. But without the choice to go, you will just sit there dreaming of that journey. After I got home and began to try and come to terms with what I was now, who I was now, I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Randall, the young man who, without fear of litigation, of getting sued by me, or without fear of getting my blood on him, he was truly like the Good Samaritan, the one who came and helped save my life. And we're good friends to this day. He let me keep the belt that he used, and this is probably my most prized possession. I've had the opportunity to go and race in many events across the nation, all the way to Texas, all the way up to Chicago. I've raced in the national championships, the world championships. I've completed the Augusta half Ironman, and I'm in training towards Chattanooga full iron distance. Now, of all of the awards and the trophies and the accolades that I've received, nothing compares to this and the symbol that it means to me. So here I was at home after having met Mr. Randall and being able to thank him for what he did for me that day. I was kind of lost. I was kind of stuck. I wasn't sure what I could do. You know, when I first woke up in the hospital, I'd been asleep for 7 days. Atrophy, because your muscles, if you don't use them, you lose them. I was literally so weak, I could barely even touch my own face. So I was still kind of at a physically devastated state, trying to understand, trying to learn, trying to move forward, figure out what I could do. For 30 years, I've worked out in the construction industry. I've been able to, climb all over houses, all over the country. I wasn't an athlete. I was very active. I really enjoyed being outdoors, doing roller coasters and zip lining, whitewater rafting, all kinds of fun stuff, hiking through the woods. But I didn't really consider myself an athlete, and didn't view myself becoming an athlete. But I lost a little bit of a connection of who I was before, what I was able to do. And I began questioning myself. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any way of taking care of my wife and my kids. And I was quickly falling into a feeling of like self-doubt and insecurity. And, here I'd become disabled. I was a cripple. I was going to live this life for the rest of my life now as an amputee. It wasn't who I wanted to be. How was I going to be able to provide for my family? I can't go back and do what I used to do, climbing all over houses. I had a high school diploma, no higher education. How am I going to get out into the intellectual field and find a job where I don't have to use my body, where I can use my brain? And I began to really despise the fact that I had lived through it. I felt like my wife and my kids would have been much better off if I hadn't survived. The life insurance would have paid off. The house would have been paid for. I would have been gone, but I wouldn't be a burden to them. And it was a very difficult transition to get past. The prosthetic company that I went to, when I first walked into the door on my first appointment, I walked into the lobby and I see this on the wall. I don't know if you can tell from back there, but each picture is a picture of an amputee out living life. There's a man missing an arm out bow hunting. There's a man missing a leg scuba diving, surfing, running track, riding bicycles. All these people, a man standing on a ladder, missing a leg. And it gave me hope that if they can move past, they can get on, that there is hope. I'm not stuck. This young lady here, you see the shiny ankles? That was Miss Harriet, the nurse that had talked to me in the hospital. Coincidence? I don't think so. I believe it was divine. So I rolled in here, and I had a little bit of hope to be able to move forward. I go into the next room, and this is hanging on the wall. This is a picture of a young man named Scott Rigsby. That's the cover of his book called Unthinkable. He also is a bilateral below-the-knee amputee. Missing both feet, he became not only an Ironman, but he became the first double amputee to complete the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii. And I was amazed. And I sat there looking at that, and I thought, you know, if he can get up with no feet and accomplish such a great task, I have no reason to feel sorry for myself. I still have one good leg. They're going to build me another leg. I can get up. I can learn how to get past this. So, after they made me my first leg, and I began to learn how to walk on it, was very unstable, very insecure in my abilities. I went to a couple of little local clinics trying to learn to move forward. And I found out about this group, the Get to Try Foundation. And what they do is they take challenged individuals, physically challenged people, and they show us that we can get up and go do something if we want to. We can go ride a bicycle, we can go run in whatever shape or form that may be, whether it's in a wheelchair, and we can go swim. They taught me that I could still go swim, and I didn't have to swim around in a circle like an old one-legged duck. I could go straight if I wanted to. So we went to this 3-day clinic, and something really hit home with me at this one. I was able to spend a little more time with many of the volunteers and the coaches that were there. Every person that was there for that 3-day clinic was completely on a volunteer basis. No one had any monetary reward for what they were doing, what they were giving back, what they were sharing. And that really touched me, that all of these people would care enough about complete strangers to give up their time with their families, their vacation days at work, you know, and come and spend that time with me and people like me, just out of the kindness and the love in their hearts to go out and share and help me get over and get past, overcome the challenges and the difficulties I've had. And that hung with me for a long time. At the end of the event, we had a little short, not even a super sprint triathlon. It was a 200-meter swim, a 4-mile bicycle ride, and a 1-mile run. I still don't run very well, but that's beside the point. I was able to complete the task, though. I did swim the 200 meters in the swimming pool. I did ride my bicycle 4 miles. I did walk the 1-mile run, and I completed the triathlon. And I was just overwhelmed with that ability. Had I set out to be a triathlete? No. Did I ever in my wildest dreams think I would be a triathlete? No. I was now a triathlete, albeit a really short triathlon. I completed that task. So now what do I do with it? So I came home, and I was really, really tired because that was a long 3 days, a lot of hard work. Remember, I was still recovering, still trying to learn how to move and get back to living. In the meantime, I was offered a job. I went to work for a construction company, working in an office. Had a crash course on how to use Excel spreadsheets and Word documents and reading legal stuff and blueprints. And I've overcome that challenge, learned how to move on, learned how to make a living using my mind instead of my body every day, and it's truly been a blessing. So, in the meantime, I looked around, and it turns out that this little tiny lake close to in the community that we live in, named John Tanner, I've lived around that area for about 18 years, and I never knew that twice a year they hold a triathlon. They do a swim, a bike, and a run event every spring and every fall. The clinic was in late June. The triathlon coming up was in early September. So I had about 2 months to try to train for this triathlon if I was actually going to compete and complete it. So I prayed about it, meditated on it, and I just felt the call that this is what I need to do. Okay, so I paid my registration, I put my money on the table, I'm going to go to the start line. Whether I make it to the finish line or not, I'm going to go to the start line. So I had absolutely no idea really how to train for an event like this. You know, it's not like just training for a track event or, you know, just for a swim meet. This is 3 sports all combined into one in one day. And all I had was that little bit of knowledge from that clinic. And the fond memories of all of the volunteers and the coaches that had encouraged me along the way. And so I looked around on YouTube and found some videos of other people training and some thoughts and hints, and I said, okay, I can do this, I can do it. So here I've got a new job, I'm working 9-10 hours a day, trying to train, kids still to deal with, life is moving on, I'm adjusting, I'm adapting, I'm training, and my mom asked me one day, she said, son, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to kill yourself again? You know, you're going to go out there and you're going to compete in this thing. I'm worried about you. It's hot out there. You know, it's a big old lake. It's a long bicycle ride. A 5K, you know, 600-meter swim, about a 13 or 14 mile bicycle ride, and then a 5K run at the end. So I'm worried about you. And besides, you can't win. I told Mom, I said, well, no, I don't really have a death wish, but I feel the need that I must accomplish this. I need that sense of accomplishment back. And besides, if I don't give up, if I make it to the start line, I don't get discouraged. I continue my training, and I just go start. That's a win. If I drown in the lake, if I get run over on the bike ride, if my heart blows up on the run, if I die before I get to the finish line, as long as I don't give up and I go start and I attempt, then that's a win. So I train, and the day to go to packet pickup, where you pick up your race bib and your info and stuff for the race, I had a chance meeting. I met these 2 brothers, these 2 young men here, Kyle and Brent Pease. Kyle has cerebral palsy. He's been in a wheelchair most of his life. He's unable to get up and do much of anything on his own, like most of us can. He can't run, he can't swim, he can't bicycle. His brother, Brent, an accomplished Ironman triathlete, takes his brother on triathlons with him. Now, not just for the race, to watch him go race. They race as an assisted athlete team. Kyle rides in a raft, and Brent swims the distance, towing his brother in the raft. When they finish the swim, he puts Kyle onto a specially designed tandem bicycle, and he pedals the bike distance, pushing his brother on the bicycle. When they finish the bike, he takes him and puts him in a specially designed wheelchair, a racing wheelchair, where he can run and push his little brother, or his brother, in the wheelchair, and allow him to start, complete, and finish the race. Gives him that opportunity to go out and compete. He said, Kyle borrows my legs, and I borrow his spirit. And as we talked that day for a few moments, you see, I was on my way to my first real triathlon, and I had, honestly, very little confidence in my ability to complete this task that I was going to go attempt. I literally could drown in the lake. I literally could get run over on the bike. It's out on the public road. You know, I literally could have could become so physically devastated that I just would give up and not go ahead and finish the race. Brent told me, you can do this. He said, as long as you don't give up, it doesn't matter how long it takes you. Just start, stick to your plan, don't give up. You will finish. Kyle told me, he said, you know, we are all blessed with gifts. Each of us has a very unique gift that we're given. He said, it is up to us to make a choice. Do we take our gift and do we hold it all to ourselves and not show it to anyone? Or do we open that gift up and share it with the world? You have a choice. You have a gift. Will you choose to keep it to yourself, or will you share it with the world? Those two young men were on their way that weekend to the Ironman Wisconsin, a full Ironman race. Their first, Kyle's first Ironman distance race. Here I was going to a measly little sprint distance race with very little confidence in my ability to complete the task. These two young men were on their way to their first Ironman, 140-mile race, with enough confidence in their abilities that it just overflowed. And I was able to latch on to just a little bit of their desire to complete their task and take that with me as I went my race. I went. We started to swim. It's a little 600-meter swim. Not that much. I had trained for the distance, or so I thought. I'd swam in that, 5 miles from my house. I swam in that lake many times while I was training. I severely underestimated the actual distance. As I swam, I would swim my heart out. Well, for what seemed like forever, and I'd get tired, and I'd roll over, and I'd do a backstroke for a little while. Oh my goodness. Why are you doing this? Oh, okay, swim like crazy. Like, what seemed forever until I couldn't move my arms anymore. I'd roll over and I'd backflip. Oh Lord, really? Is this what you really want me to do? Look, that's a pretty cloud. Swim! So, it took me over 30 minutes to swim that little 600-meter distance. But as I swam, I kept thinking of Brent as he was swimming 2.4 miles, towing his little brother in a raft. 2.5 miles he's going to swim. And he ain't going to give up. And I ain't going to give up either. So I made it to the finish. This is my wife, which, by the way, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to do all of the amazing things I've been able to do without her understanding, her support. She was waiting for me. Probably the last person out of the lake. She was waiting for me with my crutches so I could move on to the bicycle. Now, I don't have any pictures of the bike ride from that day. This is from a later race. But you can see my fancy little old yellow bike. When I bought the bicycle, I had no idea about sizing and all of that. Somebody said, yeah, it's a lightweight race bicycle. Sure, it'll work. So I bought me a bicycle. And you can tell it's a little on the small side. But functional. I rode that bike all the way through the national championships a year and a half later. A good old trusty steed. I have a much better one now, but it did the job. So I biked. I went out. I cycled as hard as I could. About halfway through the ride, climbing up a hill on the backside, my chain came loose and came undone. I don't know if any of you have ever had a bicycle chain come undone. Sometimes it can get a little sketchy trying to get it put back on. So, luckily I didn't wreck. I get off the bike, and I'm trying to get this chain back on. Don't give up. Come on, I'm thinking about Brent pedaling that big old behemoth tricycle with his brother, pedaling 116 miles?
112.
112, oh sorry. only 112 miles.
You have to do 100. You have to do 116 in Chattanooga, so
That's
keep
not
that
what I'm training for,
exactly.
yes. So anyway, so just a minor setback. Focus. Finish. Don't give up. You can do this. Now remember, I was going up a hill. For me, I'm basically riding with one leg. This one doesn't do a whole lot of good. The prosthetic weighs about 12 pounds, so it's just about all that my little nubby can do to swing that 12 pounds around. If you can imagine wearing a 12-pound shoe on one foot, it's a little awkward. So starting off on a bicycle going uphill is almost impossible for me. The hill was too steep. I wasn't going to be able to get going that direction. I literally had to turn around, go the other way after I got the bicycle chain fixed, go downhill where I could get my feet clipped into the pedals, then turn back around and pedal back up that hill again. Hope the chain didn't come apart. And the chain stayed with me, and I pedaled, and I pedaled, and I pedaled, and I made it to the end of the bike portion. Now it's time for a 5K run. Well, I use the term run loosely. You can see I was still very unstable and insecure in my abilities to keep my balance. I used a cane for not only this first race, but 3 more races after this on the run portion, just because I didn't want to trip and injure myself, so I used a cane for stability. You'll notice the big white van in the back. That's what's known as the sweeper van. Some of you may be familiar with this term. What this man's job is, after the race is finished and after all of the competitors have gone their merry ways, he goes around and he picks up the volunteers and the tables and the water stations and stuff like that. For the last half of the course, the sweeper van was right on my tail, slowly waiting for me to meander on to the finish line. So I did finish, barely. I did finish. I was constantly thinking about Kyle and Brent. Brent had swam 2.4 miles, towing his brother. He had bicycled 112 miles on this monstrous behemoth bicycle, not only pushing the extra weight of the bicycle, but of his brother, and was running a full marathon, pushing like a giant oversized stroller with his little brother in it. A full marathon, all in one day. So I was able to maintain and cross the finish line. And as I crossed that finish line, all of the events that had happened over the past 7 months, from the day of the wreck, the young man that stopped and literally saved my life with his own hands, the young woman at the hospital who told me, nobody's going to blame you. Nobody's going to fault you if you go home and feel sorry for yourself. But you don't have to. All the volunteers that just given their own time, their own talents to come out and help me learn to overcome my challenge. I literally broke down, and still getting a little choked up, broke down in tears as I crossed that finish line. The overwhelming flood of emotion, what I've been able to accomplish, and all the people that had helped me get to that point that day, was an amazing adventure. Found out later that Kyle and Brent had completed their task, Kyle's first Ironman competition, in a very respectable 15 hours and 9 minutes. There are many able-bodied triathletes that struggle to meet that goal, and they had become Ironmen. Not long after that, like I said, I've had the opportunity to race in many different events, partly due to the amazing technology and the talents of the physicians, the prostheticians, the prosthetic devices that I'm able to use. Very cool equipment. You can sink a bunch of money into it really quick. But the equipment on its own can't do much. The philosopher Sir Bernard Williams said, man has never made any material as resilient as the human spirit. All that high-tech equipment, it's just trinkets, just baubles sitting on a shelf. If I don't have the desire to get up and make it do its job, without my spirit, my desire, my determination, all that stuff is just dust collect. You see my wall of inspiration there, and that's my my doctor, Shane, very nice guy. If you'll notice, one of the pictures has now changed.
Yeah.
That's old Johnny Five Toes. I am now on my wall of inspiration, hopefully inspiring someone else that comes in and looks and says, you know, if he can do that, maybe, just maybe I can too. So, the main thing I want y'all to take away from this, Dr. Martin Luther King says, as my sufferings mounted, I soon realized that there were two ways in which I could respond to my situation. Either to react with bitterness, or to seek to transform the suffering into a creative force. I decided to follow the latter course. We have a choice, free will. We can choose to become bitter, or we can choose to be better. On any situation we're faced with, whatever struggles. Now, my main challenge is a physical challenge. It's real easy to see. But if you remember the story, I struggled with some serious mental challenges along the course. We all are faced with many challenges throughout our lives, whether it's feelings of insecurity, self-doubt, or depression, financial issues, issues in relationships. We all have struggles and challenges that we're faced with that are not visible. You can't see what someone else is faced with on a daily basis. So what I hope that y'all will bring away from this, I didn't come here to brag about what I've been able to accomplish. I came here to tell you about how I got to this point. Through the help of all of those people, starting from the young man who was willing to take a chance and save an old busted up biker's life, to all of the people who encouraged me through their words, through their actions, and the volunteers that gave their time to strangers to help them overcome the difficulties that they face. And that's what I hope y'all will take home. So, any questions? Yes.
How old were you when the recent accident?
This was 3 years ago, so I was 27. No, I'm kidding. No, I was 47. Yes.
If you could stop the accident from happening, would you?
That's a very good question. I went over that many, many times in my mind. What could I have done different? I blamed myself. I created this. If I had not chosen to put that key in that bike that day, at that time, and go and make that turn, what could I have done differently? If I had done something differently, I wouldn't have put my family through all this. Could I go back and change it? Would I go back and change it? No. No. My opinion is God's will. This is how I am supposed to spend the rest of my life, and I have been blessed with the gift and the ability to stand here and talk to y'all today.
So do you impact your leg when you go to sleep?
Yes, yes, it is. It's not extremely comfortable. I do take it off when I'm able to. I actually swim without it on, and I run in a wheelchair now, so I take it off for the wheelchair.
Did they ever touch the body people?
No, sir. The laws wild man had not caught him, but if you remember from my story when I said I realized that being mad at him wasn't going to do either of us any good, right after I prayed that I would not die that day, I prayed for forgiveness for myself, prayed for forgiveness from my family, and I prayed for forgiveness for that man, or woman, whoever the person was.
So after your accident, you said that when you woke up from your 7-day coma, you couldn't really move at all, like you could barely touch your face.
Right.
Well then, how did you get the thing in your throat out of your mouth?
I have no idea. Like I said, I was coming out of a very heavily medicated state, and I don't remember doing it. I was told that I did it, and I couldn't talk, so I said, yeah, maybe it sounds like something I might do. By the way, I do not recommend that. If you ever find yourself with one of those things in your throat, leave it there, let them take it out.
Are they waterproof, or do you have to take them off?
So the parts that I have aren't really waterproof. They're water resistant. They do make some that are really cool waterproof. This one is as close to waterproof as what I've got. This is what I use to cycle with. It's kind of the same thing. It's just a little smaller knee. But no, not really waterproof.
What do you use those different types of things for?
Okay, so this is what I use on a bicycle. I had a little bit of a problem when I first started riding. My foot didn't want to stay on the pedal, and it would just kind of wander off wherever it wanted to go. And then, so I found out about these shoes that have clips on the bottom, which is what all the cool kids wear. It actually makes it much faster. You're able to, since you put your foot to the pedal, you're able to lift on the pedal stroke also. It's not just pushing down. You're able to get some power out of the stroke all the way around. So this is what I use to cycle with. You see the picture where I was walking on the blade. This is the blade. I switch the parts out here and use this same knee to run.
What was your fastest time in your racing?
Fastest time in any of my races. The fastest time would probably be the Captex in Austin this last spring at National Championships. I did an hour and 16 minutes-ish, only because they canceled the swim. It had rained a bunch. The river wasn't safe to swim in, so yes.
How much different is it to move around with a bicycle?
It's very different. Have you ever like walked on stilts, or maybe like one of the pogo stick kind of things, or something like that? So it's sort of like that, but not at all. So you know, of course, I can't feel anything from here down, so you don't get those signals back. And I got to be really conscious all the time about what I'm doing. The only thing that moves really is the glute muscle and the hip flexor muscle. So it's not a lot of help from it.
When you're walking or maybe jogging, what is the difference between both of your legs? Like, what does it feel like when one leg feels different from the other?
Okay, so yeah, the main difference would be this one doesn't get tired from here down. From here up, it gets tired pretty quick. But yeah, so that's the main difference.
I have two things. One, how do you get how do you take the shoe off the thing?
Good.
Like, it looks like the shoe goes in there and then
Good question.
out.
So, here, let me see. accident happened, I was about 7 miles from my home. I had stopped by the store that my wife worked at the time. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, beautiful sunny, January afternoon, and my motorcycle been stuck in the garage for months, and I was like, yeah, go ride. And I stopped at the store my wife worked at, pulled out of the store, and about a block later, my decisions that day and the other person's decisions intersected. Yes.
Why? Like, what was the reason of the last one?
Honestly, I don't think they ever saw me. I was traveling south on a 4-lane road that had a big turn lane, so big giant open road. I was in the far right lane, and like I said, I just pulled out of the store. My old motorcycle was, big old putting around bike. It wasn't like one of those kind of. It was just for putting around. So I was traveling in the far right lane, and as I crested up over the top of the hill, there was a pickup truck coming the opposite direction. He didn't turn on his blinker. He didn't get in the turn lane. He turned left across in front of me so fast that I wasn't able to avoid him. I tried, but it was just so quick. So he just wasn't looking very well. He or she, whoever they were, they may have been distracted by the radio, telephone,
Can you show us your medal?
Oh yeah, so this one, like I said, I've got tons of these from pretty cool events I've been throughout the last 2 years. This one was from this past weekend. This is the Hot Chocolate in Atlanta. It's a 5K and a 15K. My wife and I do this race every year, or have for the last 3 years. The wreck was on January the 26th of 2013, and after my first triathlon, I looked and I said, so what can I do now? And we saw this race coming up on January 26th, on the day, the first anniversary of the motorcycle wreck. Coincidence? So my wife and I and our family and a bunch of members of our church, we went up and we did the 5K, and we've done it every year as a celebration. Yesterday is not an anniversary of mourning for me. It's not a regret type of situation anymore. I let all that go. Now it's a celebration of life. So this is the medal from. This I think is actually my wife's medal because it was her first 15K.
He had another question too that he wanted. He wants to know about the piece that you put it up.
Oh.
About this piece?
Who?
Like,
It's just a little rotator thing in there. Life was very difficult before they told me about the rotator piece. When they first sent me home with this thing, I didn't have the little fancy gray piece right there. So it made it very, very difficult to see who stepped in something.
Do you ever ride motorcycles now?
Good question. Yes, I have. I still own one. While I was in training for that first triathlon and still learning to walk, every week or so I would go out into the garage and I'd throw my old leg over that other bike and I'd sit there for a minute and I'd go, no, today's not the day. While I was in the hospital, the day after I woke up, my pastor came and spoke with me and my wife, and he said, now son, are you done with all that foolishness now? And I answered him honestly. I said, well, preacher, I don't know if I'll ever have the nerve to be able to get out in the public like that. I grew up riding motorcycles. I was always kind of an adrenaline junkie, really liked exciting stuff. And I'd never had anything major happen. But that day, it was all so fast, and I had no control over what was going to happen. So I answered him honestly. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to be able to get out there again. My wife, she said, now honey, you know that if you don't ever go right again, you will go to your grave regretting it. So this is her encouraging me to go right again. And I thought about it for a long time, and like I said, about every week I'd go out there and I'd throw my leg over. No, today's not the day. After the triathlon, a couple of weeks later, one day, and I'd got to the point where I'd go out there and I'd stand back up off the kickstand and I'd be like, no, not today. Well, that day finally came. It was about 9 months after the wreck. One afternoon, I got up and I put my leg on, and I went out there and I stood over and I said, you know what? Today's the day. Put the key in. I started the bike. And I traveled the path that I had traveled that day. I pulled into the store where she didn't work there then. She moved on to something else. So I pulled into that same store, pulled out, and I traveled across that same spot where months before there'd been a huge stain in the road. And the anxiety and all those questions and fears and what if, what could I have done differently, what, why, all that turmoil that I've been fighting with for a long time. As I passed through that spot, it was like a burden, a weight was lifted off of me. I don't know why. I don't know really how to explain it. But I went on and I rode about an hour and a half out through the country, and I went back and I parked the bike, and I don't think I've been back out on it since. But I know that I can if I want to. I don't have that fear and that anxiety. My arm. That is a whole nother story. I don't know if we have enough time.
We actually have to wrap up, yes.
But when I was a child, I was 10, I was in a fire, and I was burned really, really bad. So, like I said, that's not, I don't have enough time to go into that one. But this isn't the first time that I've had, a really tough challenge to try to get over.
Yes, we're gonna have to wrap up.
One more question?
Yeah.